Alright, last time I was out here and the battery died, I was working on the valve clearance. I finished all the valve clearances. Basically, I just went from intake to exhaust on each cylinder. I started with number 3, and since I know the firing order is 3, 4, 2, 1, I waited, I cranked it over a little bit by hand, got it to do number 4, then I went over to number 2 and then number 1, and then just for good measure I went around one more time and I just rechecked everything I had set, and everything looked good as far as the clearance goes. I then put the oil pan on. I got the oil pan back on, except for the nut that was missing in the back there. I can't seem to get the nut to go on that I have. The nut was originally missing. The threads might be damaged, or I'm not sure, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. I topped off the oil, but I inadvertently dumped that whole jug in, thinking that that was 4 quarts, which is the capacity of this motor, and the jug is 5.1 quarts. So I'm actually just loosened the drain plug a little bit so it's going to drip in there, and I'm going to take some of that oil off because right now my oil level's too high. I also actually checked for compression and spark, and I'll show you how I did that. Okay, this is my compression tester. It's a small engine compression tester, and it doesn't thread in. It's just basically got this little rubber cone shaped thing, and you push it into the spark plug hole and hold it in there and crank the engine until the reading doesn't go any higher, and then you know you've got your compression reading. It's got a little check valve in the end there. So what I did was I stuck this in the cylinder and cranked it over, and I get 120 pounds as the max reading. I think it would go higher if it was a screw-in compressor, because during the compression stroke it's actually blowing this out of my the hole. I can't hold it in there and crank the engine at the same time. So what I did was I did that same check on all 4 cylinders and came up with 120 on each cylinder. So no one cylinder was plus or minus more than 10 psi of another cylinder, which is a good sign. I was really concerned about this cylinder because this is the one that had the weird anti-fouling extension that somebody had put on the original spark plug, and so I thought that cylinder was gonna have low compression, but it doesn't. So maybe this was fouling because of a badly worn valve, and of course we've got brand new valve guides in the new head that would take care of that. So I'm hoping that's what was going on there. The other nice surprise was I actually took one of the old spark plugs, put a wire on it, and actually got spark when I cranked it. So the points and condensers seem to be working. The ignition system is working, which after sitting for so long I would not have been surprised at all if I didn't have any spark. But I do have spark. So since I lost one of the original spark plugs when I was taking them out originally, and the other plugs are old anyways, I'm treating this to a new set of spark plugs. Now the plugs that are in here now are Champion D16s, I think, or is it D18? I can't remember. But I went online and checked, and according to the cross references I found online, this is the correct spark plug. The D16 is the correct spark plug for this engine. However, I then crossed the D16 to an Autolite number. And so what I got is I got the Autolite 386s, which is the cross for the D16s. And I like Autolite plugs better than Champion plugs, for no particular reason other than that I've just read numerous people who've mentioned they've not been happy with Champion plugs. So anyways, that's what I'm going to put in. I'll clean up the flange on the carburetor. Alright, now I know the float bowl's free and working because I can hear it. I don't know the condition inside the carburetor. Inside the throat it looks really good and clean, so I'm going to try it the way it is, and worst case scenario is if I have to take it off and clean the carburetor later, I'll do that. But for now I'm going to put it on the way it is. There is a spot right here. You can see there's a keyway in there, a little slot, and when I put this carburetor back on I need this little tang right here that sticks out. This protrusion has to I have to make sure that that goes right in there, because that's the linkage for the throttle linkage, and it also ties it into the governor over here. Well, it's just messing with this linkage, and I decided I thought I wanted it in the low speed or low throttle position when I was putting this together, but what I'm finding is that the handle doesn't want to actually go down. It's not that it's bound up because it's moving, but it's actually, there's a spring tension that appears to be from inside the governor here that's actually trying to pull it on. And I guess I shouldn't be surprised at that. That seems normal. Like in most engines, when the engine is off, the governor is actually trying to pull the throttle full open. But once the engine starts and the RPMs come up, then the governor is supposed to start working and pull the throttle back closed to maintain the set RPM. So I'm going to go on the theory that it's supposed to be in full throttle position when I'm putting this all together. It's interesting, I got the throttle in the full open position. I would have expected this tab to be up here around this area, because that would be full throttle. Because right now it's down here, and I can only move it from there to there. And let's see, that position right there would be, well, actually, it can't even move over to that position once it's engaged to the carburetor. And this position right here would be with the butterfly closed. And this tab should move in this direction, or if I'm looking at it this way, it should move, this should move counterclockwise up towards the right to open the throttle. In other words, here we see the throttle's closed, and let's see, let's get you facing this way. So, because it's a mirror image, counterclockwise there would mean clockwise here. And sure enough, if I turn this clockwise, that opens the butterfly. Well, I'm going to have to go on the assumption that we need to put it in this way, which would be butterflies closed, even though my throttle setting up top is wide open. I mean, I'm assuming that all the way up this way on this lever is full throttle. It'd be lower down here, and as you push it up, it increases RPM. That would be the logical assumption. Well, I'll tell you, getting this nut on the back side of the carburetor tightened is a real pain in the you-know-what. Had to mess around with several wrench selections and finally settled on the closed end of this short-handled 9/16 inch wrench, and even then I can't get it onto the nut. I kind of have to put it at an angle and kind of work it, so I'm not able to tighten that as much as I wish I could. So I'm kind of wishing I had put the carburetor on onto the manifold before I installed the manifold, but then I'm wondering if I had done that, how I would have dealt with this governor linkage issue over here, getting this in. So maybe that would have not worked, or maybe the correct move is to have this cover off and actually take the pin out that's in there that engages this piece, and doing it that way. I'm not quite sure. Alright, so now I'm going to install a screw that holds this captive. Another thing is, this was full of dirt. I actually shook this and a lot of dirt fell out of it, and so I just kept shaking it until I could get as much dirt to fall out as possible. And so now I'm going to put this screw in that holds this here. There's actually two screws. I think I was missing one when I went to take this apart, so if I don't have another one in my hardware here, I'm going to have to assume that that was the one that was missing, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if it was the one on the back side. Somebody had this carburetor off and was Mickey Mousing it or cleaning it or whatever, and when they went to put it back together, they may have just said, I'll just leave that screw out on the back side because it's too damn hard to get to. Well, we'll see. Alright, I'm going to get ready to put the valve cover back on with the new valve cover gasket. Getting ready to start it, but before I put the cover on, I'm going to use my little oil can here, and I'm going to just give a little juice to each one of these tops of the valve stems. And I'm going to also do the same thing on the other side there. Walk around to the other side. Give a little bit of... And that's Marvel mystery oil that I have loaded in here, so that's a good lubricant for the top end.